not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
All right, thank you for staying. Now, we'll begin with a look at the stories on the front pages of our newspapers. This is the segment we call the Dailies on Daybreak. Now, beginning with Daily Trust newspaper, you'd see ongoing party primaries, a mess, says Jonathan, the former president. Insecurity, Abuja-Kaduna flight tickets sell for over 100,000 naira. The lead story says APC presidential ticket, Buhari meets governor's mom on preferred candidate. The riders leaves aspirants, others guessing, off to Malabo for AU summit. No date for screening, 48 hours to primaries. PDP picks candidate tomorrow. And then you'd also see the pictorial. Nigerians in Equatorial Guinea welcome President Muhammadu Buhari to the African Union extraordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of States and Government in Malabo. And then you have also beside that, Omo Agege, Kole, Naji, Idris pick APC governorship tickets. Zulum, Buni, Sule, Matawale, Inua, Abiodun get return tickets. You'd find all the details on page 4 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Today is World Children's Day, as you know, or you may not know. Children seek role in decision-making as Buhari raises hope of future generations. And that's on page 7 of the Trust newspaper. Presidential race. Osinbajo's campaign trips funding raises dust. Unofficial use of presidential jet, act of corruption. VP hasn't breached law, and that's according to lawyers. These are some of the stories on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Really very interesting stories, I must say.
Quite interesting. The story about the presidential, the former, no, not the former, the vice president campaign trips funding raising dust. A lot of reactions. Some people are saying, well, you know, as a candidate, or I would say as an aspirant in an election, his travels for campaigns to meet with delegates and all that are entirely personal. And so state resources should not be used to embark on such trips. Also, there's the issue of the fact that his aides also gets allowances, you know, for some of these trips, and they travel alongside with him, and all of that is from government coffers, which is, I believe, one of the reasons why those who made the provision for political appointees, unfortunately, in this sense, it doesn't apply to the vice president. So, but other political appointees are expected to resign if they are vying for any political office, so that it doesn't give them an undue advantage, you know, on others. In this case, imagine someone who aspires to be president, but you do not have this kind of resources to travel all along. Already, it places the VP at an advantage, you know, to do his campaigns and the rest of them. But again, it's difficult to actually separate the person of the vice president and, you know, his personal engagements, right, especially when there are no laws against them. You have also state governors who are also culpable in this, you know. So, but the problem here is that there are no laws that clearly spells out what kinds of engagements can be funded by state resources or not, especially when it comes to this one. Lawyers are saying that because there is no law, it's now merely just a moral issue. It's just a question of whether or not the VP should be doing this, you know, morally speaking.
Oh, it's quite interesting. And I think all of these things popping up at this moment further gives us an opportunity to actually create these laws for the future so that we can be able to reflect on them when things like this come up.
True, I agree. we shouldn't miss the opportunity, even though the elections have set in already. You may say, well, maybe it's late to make certain changes, but subsequently we can, maybe after the election, we can also do that. Now, the lead story, the president is expected to meet with governors, and that there is no any word about his preferred candidate as at the moment. Maybe it's going to be an ambush again, like we saw in the case of the national chairmanship of the APC, the other time. And of course, the ongoing party primaries. The former president considered it a mess. It's, according to him, the situations where we see delegates are being paid, and so the thing is now more like a game of the highest bidder takes it, or it's one of the reasons why this is being said. But these are some of the stories anyways on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Let's take a look at some more.
Okay, let's take a look at some other stories on the Nation newspaper this morning. And the lead story there states how Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, Abdulrazak won tickets. You'd find other stories as well. Sultan, fish out, prosecute unknown gunmen. That story is on page 5 on the Nation newspaper. And then on page 7, you see the story about man laments effect of interest rates hike. Consumers may pay more. You find other stories on the Nation newspaper on page 3 and page 5. I didn't abandon youth service, Odua insists. And then the story about primaries monetized, a mess, says Jonathan. You'd find other stories below that. Clean sweep for governors, APC holds governorship primary. INEC, only results of monitored polls acceptable. You see also Shagari quits PDP after loss in Sakwato. And then Obaseki's camp loses to Obi's group. These are some of the major stories on the Nation newspaper this morning.
All right, now let's take a look at others. You have the Punch newspaper also. It leads with a political story. It says governorship primaries. Fresh crisis hits APC. Factions boycott polls, threaten suits. You'd also see Lagos aspirants protest exclusion. Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, Omar Agege, Matawale, others win. You see Abe, Ogun. Sokoto aspirants alleged fraud, threaten suits. Kiamu, Ojogbo, others absent. You would also see the picture of the president arriving at Malabo, and then you also see beside that PDP gets parallel governorship candidates in Ogun, and then Kano, Akwa Ibom as well. The next one, I will ensure Nigeria exports fail in 2 years, and that's according to Bakari. The very bottom there, APC primary, court decides Jonathan's fate today. Ex-president gets waiver. Osinachi, FG slams homicide charges against husband. Police arrest 43,329 kidnap robbery suspects in 1 year. And then at the very top there, you'll see the story about CBN defends Naira with $3.4 billion in 2 months. Tinubu, Kwankwaso, Ekweremadu may lead regional parties. Now, these are some of the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Just like we are seeing the parallel governorship candidates in Ogun, Kano, and Akwa Ibom. Now, if you take a look at what's happening in Kano, it's quite unbelievable. Yes, we have 2 primary candidates that emerged from the Kano PDP primaries. One, the former son of Sani Abacha, Mohammed Sani Abacha, and then you also have Aminu Wali, the son of one of the elder statesmen in the state. Now, the court has already given an injunction about which of the factions is legitimate, the Shehu Shagagi faction. And I'm wondering why that this should still go ahead. Like for the elder statesman, I'm seeing more like, why must it be your son? It looks like you're kind of fighting for your son to be the candidate. That's what it looks like. And so you don't care, you know, even if it is at the detriment of the party. Because the implication of this is that when you have these factions, the party is, you know, losing strength even as they approach the governorship election in Kano. So, and I hope that the national body of the party will intervene and bring an end to this, because when you begin to have parallel parties, who really will then eventually carry that? Even though INEC has made it clear that only one person will be submitted. So we'll see how all of that
It's quite
ends.
dramatic, you know, this times when this political season, you get to see so much drama, you know, happening in these parties. Well, we're also seeing a story. Osinechi again is in the news, you know, about, you know, that homicide issue, and we're seeing that the federal government slams homicide charges against husband. Back we heard that, you know, there were still investigations happening as regards to that case, and we've not heard much, you know, from that case in a number of weeks or months, I would say. But now we're seeing that truly this is coming to...
Yeah, I would tend to believe that, you know, all of those weeks where we didn't hear much, there were investigations that were being carried out before, you know, pressing those charges against the husband. I know that there was an autopsy that was done, you know, to be able to also determine the cause of death and, you know, some of those other necessary information needed to press those charges. So we hope that as they approach the court, at the end of the day, justice will prevail for the late singer. It's quite an unfortunate one that many Nigerians will not forget, you know, in our time. Also, this is to, you know, further show that it's a no-no for domestic violence. The society must frown at that. People should not be allowed to go scot-free for perpetrating domestic violence against, you know, other fellow human beings, whether they be children or they be their spouses or whichever form, male or female, in any ways. So that's that for the Punch newspaper, I believe.
Well, let's take a look at other papers this morning, talking about the Blueprint newspaper. And the Blueprint also leads with a political story saying 72 hours to APC presidential primaries. Fear, anxiety over party state of preparedness. And the writers there say pro-Tinubu group laments, warns. We are worried, say APC groups. No cause for alarm, Oshibajo's supporters. You'd find other stories as well. Right at the top, APC Guba primaries, victories, lamentation, intrigues, trail exercise. You'd find some writers there that say Malagi on winning path in Niger. Zulum emerges in Borno, rejects VP offer. Nwifuru Mbam in Ebonyi. Omwagige emerges in Delta. Sanwo-Olu, Matawale, Inua Abiodun, Zulum Abdurazak win return tickets. You'd find other stories as well on the Blueprint newspaper this morning. Monkeypox. Federal government commences surveillance at ports of entry. And on page 8, you see the story about President Buhari attends AU Extraordinary Summit in Malibu. And on page 7, terrorists kill 4 PDP Niger delegates. My life in danger. DCP Kyari cries out, seeks review of bail request. And then on page 14, Kaduna, Ashur floors Yero, Sheikh Hussaini picks PDP Guba ticket. Over 100 million mobile lines inactive as in March 2022, says NCC. And on page 22 on the Blueprint newspaper, Nigeria's telcos suffering from multiple taxation report reveals. And then you see a picture there that shows you the Vice President Emir Shibajo, that portal the PYU, which means the portal where they're going to be raising funds to fund his campaign. These are some of the major stories on the Blueprint newspaper.
Well, quite interesting stories. I cannot help but to also point out the story about the suspended Commissioner of Police, that's Deputy Commissioner of Police, DCP Abakari, who is, raising alarm over what he considers threat to his life through his lawyer. We have also heard that the Nigeria Correctional Service says, well, there's no such thing, that there is no such threat, to the life of Abakari, as, some of the reports are suggesting. But these are the things that his lawyer have said, that maybe they should reconsider his application for bail for his own safety and all of that. But, I mean, if it is such a big deal, I mean, there are other ways of handling this, isn't it? He mustn't be where everyone else is.
Truly,
So that's the thing. So we'll see how all of that pan out anyways. But that's that for the Blueprint. Let's take a look at the other papers that we have this morning. That is This Nigeria, for instance. It also have but the lead story talking about politics. It says PDP APC primaries, Abuja agog as politicians take over city, battle of posters, banners everywhere, aspirants in last-minute lobby of delegates. You'll see also Emefiele should be fired, according to Falana. Hike in feeds, poultry farmers worry over closure of farms. You'll also find the story about Edo. Court restrains INEC PDP from recognizing Obaseki's delegates list. You'd also see multiple taxation of telcos raising for bad network, according to a report. Below the masthead there, APC outgoing governors' men secure tickets in states. Those are some of the stories on This Nigeria. Now, if you also take a look at the Leadership newspaper, it's also agog with political stories. The lead story says 811 PDP delegates in moment of decision. How 14 aspirants stand. You see the pictures of some of the some of the presidential aspirants there on the front page, and then a manifesto. You see Yaya Bello leads aspirants in Channels TV rating, and these are some of the stories on the Leadership newspaper this morning.
And also, not to forget, I can see that the Leadership newspaper have a pictorial there of child brand ambassadors, as today is World Children's Day. It's really quite interesting.
Yes.
Now let's take a look at other papers this morning on Daybreak, talking about the Nigeria News Direct. The Nigeria News Direct also leads with a political story, saying 2023 elections, Sanwo-Olu, Abiodun, Omoagege, others clinch APC's Guba tickets. And then you see other stories as well. Abdulrazak touts gains of Otoge as Kwara APC affirms governor for second term. And then right at the top in business, UBA set to reward loyal customers in Super Savers draw. Then internet fraudster jailed in Kaduna to refund 36.6 million to American victim. Dangote is still Africa's most admired brand for 5 consecutive years. These are some of the major highlights on the Nigerian News Direct.
All right. Well, the story about the multiple taxation, how it's impacting on telecoms, they said that the reason for bad network is one of the stories that we've seen on This Nigeria, for instance. And I'm wondering whether or not it's valid, or the concerns and the agitations of the telcos to increase, the call
tariff.
rates, yes, for Nigerians, maybe it will help to boost some of the services, because the other time they said, well, they are seeking increase in the call rates and other tariffs because of the inflation, because of how much they have to now spend for diesel, for instance, because of some of their facilities that have been destroyed, in conflict areas such as the Northeast and all of that. And so they are really struggling to meet up with services. So maybe that's why we are now beginning to see problems with network, and all of that. And that calls attention to consider maybe some of the issues that they have raised.
Really interesting, I must say. Already we are grappling with the issue of connectivity, a very fast broadband. And with the 4G, or 5G rather, coming on board, I hope that turns out better, even though people are being asked to pay more, for 5G network.
Definitely, that's what it means. It will mean that Nigerians will have to now pay more for some of these services, because, nothing good comes easy, is it? That's what they say. So if we want to enjoy the best of the networks, maybe we should consider some kind of review of the rates, so that the telcos can be able to, again, if you look at multiple taxation, that's a problem. And so maybe government should consider, reviewing some of those tax policies. All right, now we will be taking a short breather. The next segment is My Daily Hustle. We'll take a look at how Nigerians are, fending for themselves from day to day. And then when we come back, the show will continue. Please stay with us.
When the situation where